They found him 3 days later, sitting in the middle of the road, rocking back and forth, whispering the same words over and over. "I'm sorry." His hands were empty, but his eyes were full of something no one in the village had ever seen before. This is the story of Chukwudi Okafor, a 21-year-old who thought he was smarter than tradition, clever than the ancestors, and stronger than the ancient forces that had protected his community for generations. He was wrong. And what happened after he stole from the shrine didn't just change his life. It silenced an entire village. September of 2019. A village in Enugu state where old traditions still held weight. Where grandmothers still poured libations at dawn. Where certain places were never disturbed. Where everyone knew the rules, even if they didn't always follow them. Chukwudi seemed like any other young man. He worked at his uncle's provision shop. He had dreams of relocating to Lagos. He had a girlfriend, Ngozi, who loved him despite his reckless streak. But Chukwudi had something else too. A hunger, a restlessness, a voice in his head that kept saying there has to be more than this small village life. What he didn't know was that some doors should never be opened, some lines should never be crossed, and some things, once taken, can never truly be returned. The question everyone would ask later was simple. Why'd he do it? Why did Chukwudi Okafor, who had been warned his entire life, who had seen what happened to others who disrespected the sacred, decide that one September night to walk into the ancient shrine at the edge of the village and take what didn't belong to him? We're about to find out. And the answer is more human, more tragic, and more terrifying than you could ever imagine. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Chukwudi grew up in a Mana village, a close-knit community where everyone knew everyone's business. His mother, Adiz, sold tomatoes and peppers at the village market, her hands stained red from years of handling fresh produce. His father had died when Chukwudi was 9, leaving Adiz to raise 3 children alone. She worked from dawn until dusk, her wrapper always tied tight, her prayers always fervent. Chukwudi was her first son, which meant everything. He carried the weight of family expectations, the responsibility of being the man of the house, the pressure to succeed where his father couldn't. He was a good boy mostly, smart enough to finish secondary school, charming enough to make friends easily. But underneath that easy smile was something else, a feeling that he was meant for something bigger than measuring rice and selling indomie in his uncle's small shop. His best friend, Emeka, noticed it first. "You're always looking beyond this village, guy," Emeka said one evening as they sat outside the local bar. "Like you can see something the rest of us can't see." Chukwudi just laughed. "Maybe I can." The shrine sat at the edge of the village, past the cassava farms, hidden behind ancient Irako trees that seemed to lean away from it. Nobody went there unless they had to. It wasn't marked with any sign. There was no fence, nothing to indicate its importance. But everyone in a Mana village knew. The shrine had been there longer than anyone could remember. Some said it dated back to before the missionaries came. Others claimed it was older still, that it had been sacred ground when their ancestors first settled this land. Mama Kim, the village's oldest woman and keeper of oral histories, once told Chukwudi the story. "That place holds the prayers of our people," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Every cry for protection during the war. Every plea for good harvests. Every sacrifice made so our lineage could continue. It's not just a building, Chukwudi. It's our connection to those who came before. Its memory made solid. Inside the shrine, protected by nothing more than a simple wooden door and the weight of tradition, sat objects that had been placed there over generations. A wrapper that belonged to a woman who had survived the Biafran War. A Bible with pages yellowed by time. A small clay pot containing soil from the original family compound. And at the center of it all, gleaming in whatever light managed to filter through the cracks, sat a coral bead necklace. Red and precious, the kind that chiefs wore during important ceremonies. It had been brought to the shrine 2 months earlier by an old man named Chief Okonkwo from a neighboring village. Chief Okonkwo was dying. The stroke had left him unable to walk, unable to speak clearly. The doctor said he had weeks, maybe days. But before he went, he wanted to do right. That coral necklace had been in his family for 5 generations. His great-great-grandfather had worn it when he led their people during a time of great upheaval. It represented everything the family had survived, everything they had become. Chief Okonkwo had no male heir. His only son had died young, and he believed that necklace belonged somewhere sacred, somewhere it could continue to mean something even after he was gone. The shrine keeper, an elderly woman named Mama Nina who had inherited the duty from her mother, accepted the necklace with reverence. She placed it on the altar, said the proper prayers, and marked it in her ledger. September 5, 2019. Coral beads. Chief Okonkwo, to be blessed before burial with him. Chukwudi knew all of this because his mother had been there. Adiz had helped carry Chief Okonkwo to the shrine that day, supported the old man as he trembled through his prayers. She came home that evening with tears in her eyes. That necklace is worth over 2 million naira, she told Chukwudi. But to Chief Okonkwo, it was worth his entire history. That's what you need to understand, my son. Some things cannot be measured in money. Chukwudi nodded, said all the right things. But in his mind, a different calculation was happening. 2 million naira. That was a bus ticket to Lagos. That was capital to start a real business. That was freedom from the village and the pitying looks from people who assumed he'd never amount to anything. Ngozi noticed the change in him immediately. They'd been together for over a year, long enough for her to recognize when his mind was elsewhere. "You're planning something foolish," she said one evening. "I can see it on your face." "I'm always planning," Chukwudi said, trying to sound casual. But Ngozi looked at him with those eyes that seemed to see through everything. "Don't do anything stupid, Baiko." "I won't." He was lying. They both knew it. The thing about village life is that everyone watches everyone. Chukwudi couldn't sneeze without someone telling his mother by evening time. But he also knew the patterns. He knew that Mama Nina only checked the shrine on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. He knew that the path past the cassava farms was empty after 9 at night. He knew that most people were too afraid to go near the place after dark, which meant if he was smart, if he was quick, he could be in and out in less than 10 minutes. What Chukwudi didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that some knowledge lives in the blood. Some warnings are passed down not through words, but through the way your grandmother's hands shake when she talks about certain places. Some things hold power not because of what's in them, but because of what they remember. September 18th. A Wednesday. The air was thick with the smell of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Chukwudi told his mother he was going to visit Emeka. He told Ngozi he had to help his uncle with inventory. He told himself he was just going to look. Maybe just see if the door was even locked. Nothing committed. Nothing real. But when he reached the path to the shrine and looked back at the village lights flickering in the distance, his hands were shaking. The walk felt longer than it should have. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound made him jump. The Irako trees rustled, even though there was no wind. When Chukwudi reached the door, he almost turned around. Almost. But then he thought about his mother's tired face. About the mocking laughter that followed him when people called him Uncle Chitty's errand boy. About the life he wanted that seemed impossible from where he stood. He thought about that necklace, sitting on an altar, doing nothing for nobody. And he opened the door. The inside of the shrine was smaller than he expected. Dim, the smell of incense, and something else he couldn't name. And there, on a wooden altar covered with white cloth, the coral necklace. It really was beautiful. Deep red beads that seemed to hold light within them. Chukwudi picked it up, and later he would swear he felt something. A heat, a pulse, a sense that he was holding more than beads. But he pushed that feeling down, wrapped the necklace in his shirt, walked out, and closed the door behind him. The walk back felt different. Faster, like something was pushing him forward. He didn't look back, didn't pray, didn't acknowledge what he'd done. He just went home, hid the necklace in his room, and tried to sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the shrine. Every sound outside made his heart race. At 3 in the morning, he checked that the necklace was still there and told himself he was being foolish. It was just coral, just beads, nothing more. By morning, he'd almost convinced himself. Chakoti went to work the next day like nothing had happened. Arranged shelves, served customers, made small talk. But something was wrong. His uncle, Chitty, a man who'd known him since birth, kept staring at him strangely. Chakoti, you don't look well, Uncle Chitty said around noon. Your eyes are red. Are you sick? I'm fine, Uncle, Chakoti said. But he wasn't fine. His head pounded. His stomach felt like it was filled with stones. And when he looked in the small mirror in the shop's back room, he barely recognized his own reflection. There was something in his eyes, something cold and distant. That evening, Chief Okonkwo died. The old man had been holding on, everyone said, waiting. But that Thursday, his heart simply stopped. The nurses at the general hospital said he went peacefully, but his daughter, Chioma, who'd been at his bedside, said something different. She said that right before he died, Chief Okonkwo sat up suddenly, looked at nothing, and whispered in Igbo, Onizuria, somebody has stolen it. Then he collapsed. The funeral was scheduled for the following week. The whole community would attend, and Mama Nina went to the shrine on Saturday to prepare the necklace for burial. Chief Okonkwo had wanted it placed in his casket, a piece of his legacy to carry into the next world. But when Mama Nina opened the door to the shrine, when she approached the altar, the necklace was gone. The sound she made wasn't quite a scream. It was something deeper, something that came from a place where words don't exist. She fell to her knees. She prayed. And then she did what shrine keepers had done for generations when something sacred was violated. She consulted the oracle. There are practices in these villages that outsiders wouldn't understand. Ways of knowing that don't depend on cameras or investigations. Mama Nina sat in the shrine, surrounded by candles and burning herbs, and she asked the ancestors, asked the spirits, asked the force that had protected that place for longer than anyone alive could remember. And she received her answer. Chakoti Okafor. The name came to her not as sound, but as certainty, as knowledge that bypassed doubt. She didn't question it. She simply sent word to the village head, a man named Matsi Okoro. Now, Matsi Okoro had been born in this village, had lived through wars and hardships. He knew about the shrine, knew about Mama Nina, knew that when she spoke with that kind of certainty, you listened. Send for Adi's son, Mama Nina said when Matsi Okoro arrived. He took what doesn't belong to him. How are you sure? Matsi Okoro asked, even though he already knew not to doubt her. The same way I know when death is coming, Mama Nina said. The same way I know when the rains will fail. The ancestors have spoken. Go and bring him. So Matsi Okoro went to Chakoti's house. Found a young man sitting outside, staring at nothing. Chakoti, we need to talk, Matsi Okoro said quietly. Have you been to the shrine recently? And Chakoti, exhausted and terrified and still feeling like something was crawling beneath his skin, made the worst choice. He lied. No, sir. I don't go there. Matsi Okoro just nodded slowly. Then you won't mind if we search your room. Before Chakoti could answer, his mother appeared. She'd been inside, had heard everything. And she knew. Mothers always know. Chakoti, Adiz said, her voice breaking. Tell the truth. Please, my son. Just tell the truth. Chakoti tried to maintain the lie. Try to keep that easy smile. But when he looked at his mother, when he saw the devastation already forming in her eyes, something inside him shattered. He went inside and brought out the necklace. The silence that followed was absolute. Matsi Okoro took the necklace with trembling hands. Adiz sank to the ground, her wrapper coming loose, her hand over her mouth. And Chakoti just stood there, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his entire life. Why? Adiz finally whispered. Chakoti, why? He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he had too many. Because he wanted more. Because he was tired of struggling. Because the rules never seemed to apply to people with money. Because he was young and foolish and thought he could get away with it. But standing there, looking at his mother's broken face, none of those reasons mattered. Mama, I'm sorry, he said. It was all he could say. They took him to Mama Nina. Not roughly. Almost sadly, like they were carrying something that had already broken. She looked at him for a long time. Then she spoke. You will return it yourself. Tomorrow at dawn. And you will face what you've awakened. What have I awakened? Chikwudi asked, his voice barely a whisper. Mama Nina didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, Chikwudi couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt, though that was there, but because of the sounds. Whispers in languages he didn't know, but somehow understood. Footsteps outside his window, even though no one was there. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces. Dozens of faces. Hundreds. All looking at him with expressions that ranged from sorrow to fury. By morning, Chikwudi was in a state. His mother found him huddled in the corner of his room, shaking and crying. They won't stop showing me, he kept saying. They won't stop making me see. See what? Adiz asked, terrified. Everything. Everyone who ever prayed at that shrine. Everyone who ever placed something sacred there. I can feel their pain. Their hopes. All of it. Mama, I can't breathe. It's too much. For 3 days it continued. Chikwudi barely ate. Barely slept. Whenever anyone tried to talk to him, he just kept repeating the same things. About the faces. About the memories that weren't his but felt like they were. About the weight of centuries pressing down on him. Ngozi came to see him. She sat beside him, held his hand. You have to make this right, she said softly. I don't know how, Chikwudi sobbed. I tried to give it back. But Mama Nina said, I have to wait until dawn tomorrow. You have to. On the 4th day, just before sunrise, the entire village gathered at the shrine. Mama Nina was already there. So was Adiz, her face aged by sorrow. So was Matsi Okoro. So were dozens of others, standing in a circle around the entrance, silent and waiting. Mama Nina handed the necklace to Chikwudi. You took it in darkness, she said. You return it in light. And you ask forgiveness. Not from me. Not from them. From those who came before. From those whose blood and tears made this place sacred. Chikwudi walked to the shrine on legs that barely held him. The necklace felt heavy in his hands. Not physically, but in some other way that had no name. When he reached the door, he stopped. Because he could feel it. That presence. That weight. Every person who had ever brought something precious to this place. Every prayer whispered in desperation. Every hope placed on that altar. He could feel Chief Okonkwo's great-great-grandfather wearing that necklace with pride. Could feel the generations of hands that had touched those beads. Could feel the significance of every moment those beads had witnessed. And he understood, finally, what his mother had tried to tell him. Some things cannot be measured in money. Some things hold value beyond price. Some things are sacred not because of what they are, but because of what they mean. Chikwudi opened the door, walked inside, placed the necklace back on the altar, and he fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, Chikwudi prayed from a place of true brokenness. Not the memorized prayers from church. Not the desperate bargaining when you want something. But the kind of prayer that comes from the shattered places. From a moment when you finally understand how small you are. Forgive me, he said in Igbo, tears streaming down his face. Daikiani, Baiko Bagara, ancestors, please forgive me. I didn't understand. But I understand now. I was blind. But now I see. Please, please forgive me. Outside, the village waited. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Adiz stood with her arms wrapped around herself, praying under her breath. Mama Nina watched the door with ancient eyes. And then Chikwudi emerged. He walked slowly, blinking in the morning light. His face was wet with tears. But something had changed. The wildness in his eyes was gone, replaced by something quieter. Something that looked like peace, or at least the beginning of it. He walked straight to his mother and fell in her arms. Mama, forgive me, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. Adiz held him like she used to when he was small, like she could protect him from everything. But they both knew she couldn't. Some lessons can only be learned through suffering. Some consequences can only be endured, not avoided. The village elders met to decide Chikwidi's punishment. Some wanted him banished. Others wanted him to perform elaborate cleansing rituals. But Mama Nina spoke. The ancestors have already dealt with him, she said quietly. What he experienced, what he saw, what he felt, that is punishment enough. But he must make amends. He must serve. So it was decided. Chikwudi would maintain the shrine grounds. Every week for the next 3 years, he would clear the paths, repair what needed repairing, and care for the sacred space he had violated. You will learn to respect what you didn't understand, Matsio Koro told him. And if you fail in this duty, the consequences will be far worse than what you've already experienced. Yes, sir, Chikwudi said, and he meant it. 6 months have passed since that September night. Chikwudi still lives in Amana village. He still works at his uncle's shop. But everything has changed. Every Saturday, without fail, Chikwudi walks to the shrine. He clears weeds, sweeps the compound, replaces worn items, and he sits inside for a few minutes just to remember, not to take anything, not to ask for anything, just to remember what he learned. Ngozi stayed with him. She said the boy who made that mistake wasn't the same man who was trying to make things right. They're planning to marry next year. Nothing elaborate, but it will be theirs. Adiz still works at the market, but she smiles more now. The fear that lived in her chest for those terrible days is gone, replaced by something softer. Pride, maybe, in a son who fell but chose to stand back up. The necklace was buried with Chief Okonkwo. His funeral was attended by hundreds from multiple villages. And when they lowered his casket into the ground, with those coral beads resting over his heart, people said they felt something. A sense of completion, of a circle closing, of a promise kept. Chikwudi doesn't talk much about what he experienced, about the visions, about feeling the weight of ancestral memory. Most people wouldn't understand, but he knows this. There are forces in this world bigger than individual want. There are places that hold power not because of what's in them, but because of what they represent. And there are lines that, once crossed, change you forever. You can't go back. You can only go forward. And pray that forward leads somewhere better. One evening, about 4 months after everything happened, Chikwudi was finishing his work at the shrine when he noticed an old woman standing nearby. Not Mama Nina, someone else. She was wearing traditional wrapper and blouse, and she was watching him with a slight smile. "You're doing well, NWAM," she said softly. "Keep honoring this place." "Thank you, Ma," Chikwudi said. But when he blinked, she was gone. He told Ngozi about it later. "Probably just someone from another village," Ngozi said. But Chikwudi shook his head. "The wrapper she wore. I've seen it before. In the shrine. Among the sacred items." Ngozi was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Then maybe it was one of them. One of the ancestors. Maybe she wanted you to know you're on the right path." Chikwudi didn't know what he believed anymore. But he knew he'd changed, and that the change was real. That was enough. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you convinced yourself the rules didn't apply to you? Have you ever crossed a line and discovered the other side wasn't what you expected? Chikwidi's story is extreme. Most of us won't steal from shrines or face the weight of ancestral memory. But all of us face moments where we must choose between what we want and what we know is right. And sometimes we choose wrong. The question is, what we do next? Do we run from our mistakes? Minimize them? Blame others? Or do we face them? Feel them? Let them change us? Drop a comment and let us know. What would you have done in Chikwidi's position? Would you have had the courage to face it? To make amends? And have you ever had a moment where you had to choose between the easy path and the right path? We want to hear your stories. What do you think about Chikwidi? About forgiveness? About second chances? Do you believe in the power of sacred places? Do you believe that certain places hold energy, hold memory, hold something beyond what we can see? If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of something in your own life, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to our channel because we're bringing you stories that matter. Stories that don't just entertain, but challenge you. Stories that remind us we're all connected to something larger than ourselves. Next time, we'll explore another tale of consequences and redemption. Another story about someone who thought they could bend the rules and discovered that some rules are written in blood and memory and cannot be rewritten. Until then, remember Chikwidi's lesson. Respect the sacred. Honor the past.